All right, guys, here's my first thing. Thank you so much for the questions you submitted. They were all excellent, and they were coming from a great place from the student perspective. Here's what's most important. And I'm going to be really real. I'm going to be very raw with you. And there's 16 groups that submitted at least one question each. So I'm going to go fast because I want to get through as many as possible within this hour. 95% of the questions, even though they were good, and I know where they're coming from, were coming from the wrong place. And they're the wrong questions you need to be asking because you're in this student bubble right now. So a lot of them were coming from a defensive posture, meaning, how do I get parents or my patients to understand their kids should get adjusted? Or how should I convince a spouse that doesn't believe in chiropractic that they should be adjusted? Or do I need a lawyer and an accountant and independent contractor or associate? And they were all coming from a defensive, like trying to get out of a bad situation. So they were good questions, but they were the 5% you shouldn't really be focusing on right now. What you guys need to be focusing on is, and what it felt like, is you're not in touch with DCs in the real world right now practicing. So every one of you, Christmas break is about to come up. You need to be going and visiting your hometown chiropractor, looking them up in the phone book or online, going and visiting them and finding out what their real concerns are right now. Because that's what your concerns are going to be in a year, not any of these, like maybe 5% of these. What they're going to tell you is what no one asked. Their concerns are getting new patients in the door who don't know they exist or don't know that chiropractic can help them, or just as importantly, that they're looking for a chiropractor, and how do they get themselves in front of those new patients' eyes as best as possible so they get chosen rather than the other 5 or 15 or 25 chiropractors in the area. Next is, once they come in, how to take someone from, can chiropractic help me? Can you, the doctor, help me? To, yes, this makes sense. I want to start now. I understand my insurance may not cover it all, and I want to pay you. Not one person asked the question. And then having a practice where you enjoy being in and it's really fun. You do those 3 things, everything else will get taken care of with a sentence here or one minute of learning there in terms of kids, maintenance, wellness, all the other questions you asked. So those three themes are more important than anything else out there. And when you go and talk to doctors who are practicing right now, they will tell you the same thing, and that's where you need to start coming from in what you really need to start learning now. Because again, when you cross over that graduation line and you get handed that diploma and flip your cap, nothing will change in your confidence, certainty, adjusting skills, perception from people in the community. They have no idea where you graduated from, what your degree means, what your GPA was, what your technique is, or anything. And it's what you do right now that's going to make that difference between now and when you graduate, whether you're going for an associateship and having a doctor want you in their practice, want to pay you, want to create a learning experience for you, or doing an independent contractor, or finding space and starting from scratch. It's what you do right now, and I'm going to answer all of these questions for you, but I wish they were coming from a more significant place. So maybe, depending on if I can get on another time before you guys leave for break, after today's class, tell Dr. Vanessa the next questions you have. So, group 1, could you share your thoughts on DC shifting their mentality from visit number care plans to time-based care plans that you've discussed in some of your webinars and interviews? Absolutely. And it may be easier for you to understand this than doctors in the field who have been so ingrained with visit, visit, visit forever. After the first month, I don't care what technique you practice, I don't care what practice management you've been exposed to. After the first month, you don't know beforehand what that patient's frequency or total number of visits should be. We're talking about a healing modality. We're talking about the spine and the nervous system. It's ever adapting and changing, and no 2 people are the same. And from one year to the next, they're not in you from one year to the next. So to give people a set visit number You don't know exactly what that's supposed to be at the end. Yes, you may have an educated guess, and it may be what you feel is in their best interest, which unfortunately a lot of suggested care protocols from practice management isn't, whole nother topic. But instead of thinking of it as they get 24 visits or 36 visits or more than that, a time of care, and they're going to get the exact number of visits that they need based on your objective analysis to give them the best ability to heal and correct subluxation and respond and all of that. And think of it as a case fee. I'm going to take care of you, Mary, for 3 months, and my goal at the end of this is for you to get XYZ, not your clinical data, but what they want, and they'll do that through your clinical process, and the fee is X. And then there's different ways to present that or give them financing options, but the bottom line is they don't know how many visits they're going to get. You don't either. It's going to be completely case dependent on how they're progressed. And someone may have 24 visits in that period, and someone may have 18. The person who has 18 only got 18 because they were doing so much better and didn't need that many adjustments or that much input into the spine. And even though they paid more, they're happier because they got the results quicker in less amount of visits. And people, no matter what you're told from others, don't like having to come to you. Everyone is so busy. Even if your adjustments are quick and they can be in and out in 10 minutes, people are so busy and stressed nowadays, they don't want to have to fit that into their schedule. And even though you might hate hearing this, someone would rather pay you more and see you far less times to get the results they're looking for than pay you less and have to see you 100 times over the course of a year. So one of these themes that I'm going to keep bringing up is the patient-centered understanding. Everything in chiropractic is taught on how to try to change people's minds, how to put everything that you know, that you've learned in 4 years and years of colleague conversations and seminars, and change the public or change your patients and convince them. It doesn't work. God, it hasn't worked in the past 30 years when it was the easiest time in the world because, or in America at least, because insurance was so abundant and it was so easy for patients to get as much care as they needed without any out-of-pocket. It didn't work, which means it doesn't work like statistically. The credibility of our profession did not raise. The percentage of people using it did not raise. The percentage of people using it as maintenance and prevention did not raise. And it was the easiest time we ever had to make that happen. So everything that's taught from 1985, which is pretty much the same as what's being taught everywhere else, isn't the answer. Okay. Group 2, we wanted to ask Dr. Wagner what tips he would give new graduates who are starting off in terms of where to focus our energy, time, and effort. That's a week-long conversation. The best thing I could say, go speak to doctors who are in the field and ask them what their biggest issues and concerns are, and then you decide you're going to go out and learn that before you graduate. I've already told them what they are. It's those 3 things I started with. Group 3, our question is, what is the best way to help your patient not panic when you tell them their diagnosis? So there's 2 routes there. Are you talking about a differential diagnosis where there's something serious and they need to be referred out? Like you see what looks to be cancer on their x-ray, on a thoracic x-ray, and you see their lungs. Or you do a kidney punch and you feel that they need to go to the emergency room. That's not low back pain, but it's a kidney issue. That's one aspect. Forget them panicking. You do what you need to do. And a lot of that is part of this class, and you refer them out, and the responsibility is not on you. It's on who you're referring to them, who you're referring them to. Like that diagnosis is made by the emergency room, the MD, but you did your due diligence. It doesn't matter if they panic. It's for their own benefit. I don't know if that's where the question was coming from. If you're talking about their diagnosis from a chiropractic standpoint, like subluxation, their curve, disc degeneration, they're probably not going to panic. They already know what's going on. That's why they're in to see you. They're most likely not coming in to see you because they think something might be really bad. They're coming into you once it's already gotten bad. I can guarantee for the most part, you are their last option after doing nothing, after painkillers, after PT, after orthopedic consult, after failed surgery. That's when you get them. So it's doubtful you're going to be catching something super early that they don't know about. And instead of focusing on the diagnosis, focus on the results you anticipate getting with them. So instead of it being gloom and doom, like this is so bad, this degenerative disc disease at L5, and if you don't do anything in 3 to 6 months, it's going to be this much worse. Focus on, listen, you know exactly where you are. Tell them what they told you, everywhere it's affecting their life. This is what I'm confident where we can get you in 3 months or 6 months, and then show them everywhere their life is going to change and get better. Now, I'm sorry, there's construction outside. This is New York City. There's nothing I can do about it. So, Dr. Vanessa, tell me if you really can't hear. I'm sorry.
You're good. We can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Group 4, how do you generate urgency and value during a report of finding? There's 2 parts. The value is a great question. The urgency isn't. Urgency is old school practice management garbage where you're going to push people further away. You know, it's the tactic like, okay, if you pay up front right now, I'll cut that fee in half, but it only is available right now. People have been through that so much with financial advisors, insurance agents, used car salesmen, car mechanics. Since 1985 and 1977, when those techniques came out, they don't want to hear it from their doctor and their healthcare provider. So even though that may get the low-hanging fruit to decide to pay you quickly, it's going to sabotage you in the long run. And when you're in the mentality of creating that urgency, you're going to hate practice. Trust me. Creating value is a great question and a whole different concept. And the creating value isn't about the value of chiropractic. It's not the value of subluxation correction. The value is unique to every person that you see, that new patient. And you've got to find that in the consult. What's valuable to them that they don't have in their life right now because of the constant headaches, because of the low back pain, because of the disc injury, because of this, because of the subluxation. I'm not denying it's a chiropractic issue, but the real value is what's missing in their life because the subluxation and the symptom and the condition and the pain. That's where you anchor to the value. So don't think people are going to think correcting C1 is worth X amount of money. Getting their headaches away is worth X amount of money. Now, here's where you have to balance both. Your goal for them is to get their headaches away. That's where they see valuable. But the process to get them away is through what you know is valuable, which is your care. Very, very important. Group 5, how do you build value in chiropractic to spouses of patients who don't want to come in and get adjusted? So you know that quote, trying to convince someone against their will, they're of the same opinion still? No different. That's one of those questions where you're focused on like the defensive posture. You're focused on the 2% that doesn't matter. You focus on that new patient in front of you who needs you. Let them convince their spouse. You don't need to convince their spouse, and any trying isn't going to do it. Your presence with that new patient, the results they get, the experience you give them, your authenticity, that's what will convince the spouse. No Merrick chart, no lay lecture, none of that. And especially if the spouse is coming in already with a, like, I don't want to know about this, I don't agree with you going there, that mentality. Don't waste your time trying to convince them. Group 6, the ultimate question, how did he get funding or capital to pay for opening phase of the practice? Okay, personally, I thought I was going to go to one area. I thought I was going to go to Charleston, burned a lot of money thinking about setting up there. I never actually got a lease, but burned through a few thousand at least, like prepping for that area. Realized that it's not where I wanted to be. I didn't have family, friends. I wasn't connected to the community. I just loved the charm of Charleston. It's a great vacation spot. Realized I didn't want to live there full time. I had probably $3,000, $3,500 in my bank account, came up to where I grew up in New York with my tail between my legs, and started looking for office space. And around the time I found it, I may have been gifted or given, my grandfather died, and I was given like $3,000 or $4,000 in what was left to me from him, my allotment. So we're talking about like $6,000, $7,000 total. My initial practice space, I think it was about $1,000 a month in rent, and I was renting out of someone else's space when they weren't there. And the reason I'm telling you this is because you don't need the $35,000 gutting and renovation of a blank shell space with a $3,500 a month overhead when you first start. It is very smart to start slow and steady and not have this huge overhead or debt on top of your business debt. Listen, you're going to have the student loans. You can defer them the first 6 months, a year. Then you can get on income-based repayment. You could make that work. Don't worry about that. Set that aside. But your pure business overhead in the beginning, the smaller you make it, the less stress you'll have on yourself and the best you'll be able to be going forward. Because when you have stress, it's going to stop you from being your best with people. It's going to stop you from being in the community the best. It's going to stop you from learning. You get into that sympathetic psychological mindset, you're effed. Good luck. So don't put that on yourself. And you don't need more than a room or two, a waiting room, whether it's in someone else's practice or you find something that's already set up. And depending on where you're going, you should be able to find that for less than $1,500 a month. Really sorry about this. Besides that, I had a table, a portable Astrolight table. Those are what, $500? I had my integrator that I got during school. I had a website. What else do you need? So be careful of thinking like you need to be spending $1,000 a month on an accountant, or you need to spend $4,000 on an attorney to set up your LLC, or you need the $5,000 website to be created right off the bat, or you need the $20,000 scanner when you can get a $3,000 one refurbished from a colleague. So be really smart with what you're investing in and what you really need. What you need doesn't really cost money. What you need is to learn how to get people to know you exist, that already want to come to you, or that feel maybe you can help them, and how to take them from that position of, once they get in your office, can this chiropractor help me? Is chiropractic for me? To, yes, this is what I want, and I'm totally up for paying you even if insurance doesn't cover it. None of those cost an overhead per month. Group 7, how do you expedite the paperwork process with patients? Which EHR system is most user-friendly? I don't know which EHR system is most user-friendly. You can find that out. Ask a DC in practice. The paperwork process is going to be whatever you make of it. Sure, there's some HIPAA compliances, but it's not going to be what they have to fill out in your clinic. And you can email it to them beforehand. Have them show up. Have it filled out. If you're concerned about it taking them 20 minutes in your waiting room and it backs you up, if there's certain aspects during their exam where they're waiting and you're adjusting someone, have them fill it out during the exam after the consult. I don't really get much info besides their pertinent info, like where they live and their age, and pertinent stuff. Besides, have they been to a chiropractor before? For how long? What was the reason? What was the result? I find out straight up in that conversation why they're coming in to see me. Why? Because if I ask them, why are you coming in to see me? They're only going to give a little. And then I'm going to start with the same exact question. And they're thinking, I already wrote that down. Why are you asking me the same question you wrote down? So think of everything from that patient perspective. I know with the consult I do and I show doctors how to give, they're going to open up to me fully in that consult and tell me 10 times more than they ever would have written down on that sheet of paper. Group 8, how do you communicate to someone who is the spouse of a current patient member but is currently closed off to chiropractic? We already addressed that. Stop making it about chiropractic. Make it about the patient. Their spouse will convince them. You don't have to convince the spouse. You provide great results, great service, great experience, patient-centered communication, they will convince their spouse, if it's even meant to be. Group 9, would you be willing to elaborate more on the process of outsourcing how it works? We have heard of them doing insurance in-house and allowing the patient to do it themselves, but not of outsourcing insurance. Can you guys hear me with the drilling? Probably more distracting for me. Guys, if you do billing insurance in-house, if you're high volume, you're going to have to hire a full-time person to do billing, and that's a salary you're going to have to pay, and that's a back office room that's going to be a black hole that is just awful, because I'm not saying don't do insurance. You choose what you want to do. But if you do bill insurance, you're going to just deal with a lot of red tape and annoyances, and this person is always going to have to be dealing with that. I'd rather send an Excel sheet at the end of the day to a billing company who takes a small percentage and never have to deal with the salary, the payroll taxes, the negative energy that's always present in the office. There's tons of billing companies out there. Find the one that you get good you find good testimonials from doctors using them. They take the smallest percentage, and it's seamless. It couldn't be easier. You guys are making that way too big of an issue. Group 10, one of the better questions. How does one accrue referrals from an MD? There's many ways, there's no right answer. The one way that is the most effective, that you're not going to want to hear and no one else is going to tell you, is by actually being friends with them. Like, really, being friends with them. Whether you're golfing with them or doing other stuff I'm not going to say on a recorded call. That's the absolute best way. The second, which is next, is actually showing them respect of what they do, not like animosity, like I'm better than you, what you do is horrible, which is a lot of the chiropractic school mindset. Realize there are certain things that they do that are going to be better for your patient for conditions that you can't help with or you're not responsible for, and where can you refer? Do you think an MD is going to refer to you if you don't refer to them? Do you know MDs are just as stressed in practice right now financially as DCs because insurance is a nightmare? They need new patients just as much as you do. They're not going to suddenly start referring you with any reciprocation. Third is, do they trust you? Are you someone that's known for bashing MDs in the community, or are you someone who knows their stuff? They're not going to refer a patient to someone who may have a bad experience. And sorry, a patient's not going to have a bad experience because you may not agree with MDs, but you know what an MD's concerns and objections are stereotypically to chiropractors. Can you prove and provide that they don't have any concern with you with those stereotypical concerns in an in-person meeting? And show your level of knowledge and respect for them, that you can co-manage a patient, that there are patients that you can send to them that you won't be able to help, and that there are patients that they won't be able to help that you can. Lastly, how can you give before you receive? Group 11. Do you have a certified public accountant or attorney that you work with to keep your taxes, business in order? If so, how do you find a good one? Great question, but again, it's that like 1% question. You, especially starting up from scratch, don't have a bookkeeper. I wouldn't even have an accountant until either if you don't do it on some QuickBooks or online service. Again, your startup practice is not going to be complicated. It's like total overhead minus income and your tax bracket and your state, your city, or the payroll. It's not that complicated. In the beginning at least, and probably forever. Just that practice specific. But the more important thing, and I'm not saying don't have a CPA file it at the end, but you don't need to be paying like a $300 a month retainer to a CPA to go over your books. More importantly than that is you need to know every single dollar and penny coming into your practice and going out. One, because if you don't, there's more chance that an employee will steal from you. And one, that sucks financially, but that sucks emotionally too, when there's someone you trust that's stealing from you. Two, if you don't know every penny and dollar in your business, you won't grow and increase as much as if you do know where everything is going. So to have some bookkeeper come in and go through all of your receipts every month and all the money that came in through cash or checks or insurance or credit card, you should be doing that. Or have it done at the end of every day by a staff member, and then you review it, make sure it's correct, or you do it at the end of every week, because in the beginning it's not going to be super complicated, and every month you're doing another analysis. If you're not on top of that 100%, you will not be as financially successful as you deserve to be, or you want to be. You don't deserve it because you're not doing it. But bottom line is, you do it all yourself, not to save money from not hiring an accountant, because you need to know that information. And I don't know, besides from perhaps getting your LLC set up in your state, which some states you do need an attorney, some states you don't. The filing fees are probably anywhere between $150 and $400. And so if the person's charging you $3,000, go somewhere else. It's a very simple, they submit like 2 pieces of paper. It's not a big deal. Find a business owner who has it and ask them what's the best route to do it. And it shouldn't be more than a few $100. Group 11, part 2. Do you know anything about becoming an independent contractor and being considered a small business owner rather than becoming an associate and not getting the same perks as the business owner? I don't know if you're talking about like taxes, that kind of perks, or just the learning experience and what's the best way to go. So I'm going to do the more important question is, are you considering associateship, independent contractor, or just finding your own space? 95 to 99% of associateships end up horrible. Oh, and I'm not even going to mention partnering with another graduate and going in practice together, because 1 in a million will work out. So don't even consider that. But why? Because both of you are banking on the other person to do more work and take the fear away from you. Everything that you're afraid of, you're thinking the other person's going to do it, but you both have the same fear, so no one's going to do the work, and you're going to end up hating each other. Don't go into partnership with a graduate, with a new graduate, like a friend. Associateship, most of them are going to be awful, but the best thing you can hope for is somewhere where you're really going to learn and grow and sacrifice just making your overhead getting met, like your life overhead, maybe paying, some student loan money back, but you're going there to learn and prepare yourself to open up. That's the point of an associateship, not to make good associate income. Independent contractor, you're probably not going to learn as much because you're not responsible for, yes, they're going to take a percentage, and that's someone, if you're considering independent contractor, there's so many aspects of how the contract could be negotiated. That's not my area of expertise, but talk to someone before you sign it of all the specifics. What percentage you're paying them. There's so many specifics. Everything can be negotiated. The point is you'll probably make more as an independent contractor if you're confident and you can bring people in, because it's all on you, and you're going to pay a percentage of what you bring in instead of having a fixed overhead, for your rent, your utilities. Maybe you share a front desk person, maybe not. All of that is negotiated. It still doesn't usually turn out well, and you probably had a better situation just getting your own space at a low rent, starting off from scratch, and learning as you go and making it work, and having a good mentor, a good coach, a good community of chiropractors that you're in contact with every week. That's the better route to go. But don't do that if you know you're not ready to go out on your own. Go with the highest quality associateship. Build your skills right now where someone wants to take you under their wing, pay you, train you, teach you, and is confident that you're going to help their practice. Group 12. What tips do you have for improving patient communication so the patient does not feel we are rushing to the next patient in a high volume practice? That's such a loaded question. What's high volume? Why do you want to be high volume? A lot of chiropractors come out of school wanting to be high volume, purely ego, purely to look better in the eyes of colleagues, purely because they think they're just going to make more money with high volume. And I know plenty of 1,000-a-week visit practices that, are scared about college tuition for their kids. That means they're not making as much as you think they are. I know plenty of 100-a-week, 150-a-week practices that are not scamming insurance, and the doctor makes far more income and has a much better lifestyle and is making a bigger difference in their community than 1,000-a-week practices running around like a chicken with their head cut off. That's not to say high volume is bad, right? But it's not black and white. It's what you make of it. So if you're in the position where you are rushing out of one patient to get to the next, there's nothing you can say that's going to make a difference. Patients are going to feel that. They're probably not going to stay with you. They're not going to refer. And that's not a fun environment for you to practice in either, where you're always rushing. The short answer is the communication should be making it about that patient and not about chiropractic. That's the short answer. Group 13, I was wanting to know his adjusting protocol. What is it? My protocol, I do TRT. Why? Because that resonates with me. you should pick, there's 3 different types of ways to analyze the spine in chiropractic. There's the tonal, the intersegmental, and the structural. Example of structural, CBP, Pettibon, intersegmental, Gonstead, diversified. Tonal would be upper cervical, TRT, network. Each of those, the chiropractor has a much different understanding and viewpoint on the nervous system, the spine, and healing, and what chiropractic is to them. Know that first, and then pick the technique within that realm which resonates with you the most. None of them are better than the other. It's the practitioner that is really gonna make the difference with the results. How great are you at the technique? How certain are you? How much did you train? Or did you just finally learn to, do a supine cervical, hear a crack, and then you're like, okay, I'm just as good as 50% of the chiropractors out there, I'll go. That's gonna be internal self-sabotage if you know that's going on, and it's gonna be just external because patients deserve better. So be very careful about flying sevens, even if you're doing that approach to a structural model, where like the structural model may endorse, all the modalities to curve the spine, but you're gonna give a flying 7 approach. It's not cool. Patients deserve better, even though 80% will feel better when they walk out the door or in general. It's not what chiropractic was based on. Can you give a couple examples of how your patient visits differ from person to person? They differ on my communication, because I'm not going in with an agenda like they need to know this or learn this on this visit. I'm going in with, what do I remember and what do I know and what have I recorded about what's important to this patient, and are we going along on the pathway and the process of leading them towards that, and how can I instill that we are, even if they're doubtful. From a clinic perspective, not going to get into it. That's whatever you find they need, however you practice. That's what's different on a clinical, physical technique approach. But communication, I remember practice management companies having this little note card that they'd have you hold in your pocket, and it was 80 visits worth of, this is what should be addressed on visit number 3 and number 17 and 23 and 47. And it's canned and scripted, and you're gonna hate that, and your patient's gonna feel it too. So be careful about that. Patient-centered communication with everything. Lead them always to where they wanna go, not where you think they should need to go or need to know. Is it a barrier to patient communication if you take notes on a paper while you are having your patient visit? If so, should you record the meeting or try to take notes after? Don't try to take notes after. You're not gonna remember it, and it's gonna be a complete waste of time. Taking notes is absolutely fine as long as you're engaged. That's think about if someone goes into an MD. They're probably happy the MD is taking notes rather than standing there shaking their head, because they know they're going to remember stuff and it's recorded down. So absolutely take notes, but you know what's respectful, and keep as much eye contact as you can and be engaged. Scribble as the least amount you can that you'll remember what that means. Is there a certain way to palpate and do your exam that seems to contribute more to building the relationship with the patient? Palpate, from one perspective, work on your hands. When I was in school, there was Arnaud, if you know Arnaud Bernier, his MLS adjusting seminars. He has, from what I know, the most humanistic approach to entering into that physical connection with the patient, whether it's from the analysis or the adjustment itself. He doesn't teach a protocol or analysis, it's the how to go about it. So if he comes to your school, I would definitely recommend doing one of the weekend seminars and realizing that, there's 2 percentages of change where touching the patient's ankle to do a leg check, or their neck or their back, can feel really odd and eerie to them, or can feel super welcoming and comfortable and professional. So you've got to be aware of how that's coming off to people. And then from the communication, again, everything in your exam should be catered to the fact that if you're finding stuff, this is the reason or the cause of why they have the headaches, why they can't sleep through the night, why they have low energy during the day, and they can't perform as well at work or back home with their spouse or play 18 holes of golf with their friends on the weekend or tennis or weight loss goals, that's what you're connecting it to, because they're not going to understand. And I'm not saying there's no time or place to talk about subluxation or your chiropractic findings, but it's about 5% of what you think it is. And if you do more, you're actually pushing the patient away in the beginning. Do you ever have, oh, great question. Do you ever have patients leave once they're feeling better before you have the chance to transition to talking to them about wellness care? Absolutely. That's completely normal. You will have that too. And every single practice in the world has that. And even if you're going into practice with the wellness, family wellness approach, you will still have that, and that's okay, and that's normal. You are not going to be able to defend against that. The best thing is realize that's going to happen and let it go. Don't think you did something wrong. Don't think you didn't educate well enough. Don't think you didn't learn that course, that wellness course that someone's offering. No, that's just going to be an aspect of human nature. And a lot of people that's going to happen. So don't worry about it. It's building the relationship and setting people up on what's possible for them next of the ones who don't bail. That's what you need to learn, rather than worrying or concerned about the people who bail. There's always going to be that percentage. Nothing you can do about it. With time-based care plan, how do you charge the patient? Case fee. That's it. You can have financing options. They can pay for it. They can pay in 3 installments, 6 installments, whatever works and makes sense and is congruent for you. How do you have a payment plan that isn't dependent on visit numbers? Just mentioned that. Don't you have to charge the same amount per visit? Absolutely. And from there's different realms. The overall concept is very simple. If it's a straight cash patient, it's the simplest. If it's out of network, but they have a high deductible, still pretty simple, but there's more strategy to go into it. If you need a itemized receipt, let's say for them or the insurance company, and yes, you do have to keep codes specific to a certain price. 9940 can't be 45 for one person and 75 for another. I'm not going to get into it here, but there are still ways to keep it legal, kosher, ethical with the insurance company or an itemized receipt and still have it as a case fee. Now, for in-network purely, doesn't work as well, but you can still recommend a term of care to a patient, like a month or 2 months or 3 months. And we're going to start at 2 visits a week for definitely the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then adjust that frequency as I see you progress without telling them the total number of visits to expect. And just by not telling them the total number of visits, you will see more people start care with you and refer to you right there. So, watch every other practice management start copying that within the year. Group 14. What are some important topics you communicate to someone who has never been to a chiropractor and never been adjusted before? I.e., your goals for them, their goals for themselves, how you help them achieve them, what an adjustment is, how it will feel, what's most important, and how do we keep that convo concise? So great question. That's actually one of the questions that I'm talking about when it comes from someone comes in and can chiropractic help me? Can this doctor help me? Do I trust this chiropractor? Does this care plan make sense to me? That's what you need to learn. That's what probably doctors I work with see the most amount of difference in increasing the amount of patients they can help, the money they make, and enjoying practice. And some of that I addressed in the last class. I'm not going to go through it here right now, step by step, but when you make it about them and what matters to them, what's missing in their life because of their pain, condition, subluxation, symptom, whatever you want to call it, and you cater why you're doing the exam to that, the recommendations you're recommending for them to get that back, you will see a dramatic difference in flipping a patient's mindset rather than making it all about a different paradigm of health, like vitalism, or how significant and important subluxation correction is, or how horrible their subluxation or spine is and how greatly they need to fix it. Those are the three areas that are just pushed down chiropractors' throats to push down patients' throats over the past 30 years. I'm telling you, it's not going to make the difference. You make it all about the patient, that will make the difference. And the best way is lead patients to where they want to get to. Whatever they said, in their words, through your service, your care recommendations, rather than leading people to subluxation-free, perfect spine, vitalistic health standpoint who's, they're never going to touch an antibiotic again. Instead of leading them to any of that, lead them to where they want to get to through your best clinical recommendations. It's going to make all the difference in the world. How do I communicate the importance of continued care and not stopping once the symptoms are gone? Great question too. Bridging the gap from pain-based to functionality. So I'll give it away. There's 6 questions in that consult that needs to be mastered. Question 5 has 2 parts, and it ties into this. Question 5, part B. I'm going to just share with you, and this is a question that is a beautiful way to, instead of telling someone or trying to educate someone that there's a difference between symptomatic relief and true correction and healing, because when you try to tell them, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. But if you ask them and you say, hey, Mary, I want to be on the same page here, and I want to know where your headspace is. What's your expectation in terms of a timeline from when we start taking care of you and start adjusting you? When do you expect to start feeling initial relief? And then when do you expect for this to be fully corrected and healed? Do you see what I just did there? By asking a question, she now knows that those are 2 different things. If I told her that, would go in one ear and out the other. By asking her that question, she now knows just symptom relief is not the same thing as full-on correction and healing. There was no fear tactics. There was no gloom and doom where you might feel better at visit 6, but if you stop then, it might come back 3 times as bad in 2 months. Just that will get them to understand that symptoms relief does not equal full-on correction. There's 2 different timelines, and even symptom relief may take time. So you're planting that seed, you're educating them right there, and then you're going to get a good understanding of where their head's at by their answer. And when you do the questions up until then correctly, the best answer you'll get is, I don't know, doc, whatever you say. Because they have complete trust in you. That's what you need to expect upon graduation, being that powerful with new patients without any force or fear. Group 14, question 3. What is the most challenging aspect of patient communication from my experience, and what did I do to improve and get better at it? Great question. Most challenging is patient-centered communication is not our set norm. It's not our default. So you've always got to be reminding yourself, practicing, and you can have a cheat sheet on your consult page. Have the questions you're going to ask. Have reminders. So it's not our default. It's not just the natural way we think. The second is that everything else in the profession is trying to shove into your head that you need to shove into patients' heads what you know and what you think they need to know. So you need to detach from that as well. And the more you do of that, the further you're pushing patients away, especially when they have to pay for care. And there's a reason that practice management has been preaching that for the past 30 years. Like, drill it in, make them take a subluxation quiz before you meet them during the consult. Right when you meet them with the consult, tell them exactly what subluxation is and what you do in your practice, and don't even listen to a word they say. There's a reason all that worked, or they thought it worked, and it wasn't because of the communication. It wasn't because of the education. It was because from 1983 to 2005, most patients in the US didn't have to pay for care. And you could pretty much say anything to them without assaulting them or physically insulting them, and they would have started. So what the practice management, what the coaches thought was, wow, this communication works, people are learning. But it wasn't that. It was because care was free. And another reason why you know it wasn't that is because no percentage of increase in the population happened of getting care, preventative or wellness, or reputation. So if the communication was working, that would have happened. Now what's happened in the past 5-10 years, state specific, is as insurance is going away, patients have to invest money in your care. That is an emotional decision, and education does not cause your patients to make an emotional decision for the better. So that's why it doesn't work, unless you go with what more practice management is shifting to, which is fear and force and coercion, which will work in the short term, but will sabotage you in the long term because you won't get referrals, you won't get retention, and worse off than the financial aspect or not helping as many people is you're going to hate showing up in your practice every day saying things to patients that you wouldn't say to your parents, your spouse, your best friends, or someone who actually knows the spine, like an orthopedist. If you know internally that you're saying stuff that you can't say to those people, it's not a fun way to practice no matter how much money you're making. It's not cool waking up with those feelings or going to bed at the end of the night, even if you've got the Ferrari and the mansion. Why not have both? Not the Ferrari and the mansion, feeling great about yourself and being financially abundant. Group 15, in terms of business, what are some things to ask a doctor when thinking about buying their practice? Really good question, I'm glad you asked. You are making the biggest mistake of your life if you're planning on buying a practice straight out of school from someone retiring. Do not do it. 80% of that practice, those patients and that revenue will be gone the second you take over. So I'm not even going to go into why. Just do not buy a practice straight out of school. Like, you have no preparation. What you're going to learn in your first 3 years of practice, everything. Don't go into like being given this thing that you can mess up and that you paid for to mess up. Chiropractic is so personality specific that no matter how great of an adjuster or how nice of a person you are, those patients are going to follow the person they had been going with. So that means if that person retires, that patient stops getting care. It's all personality specific, 80% of it. The other 20% is you, and you coming out of school, you're not ready to buy a practice and think you're going to maintain it. Don't even consider it. Working with an associate with a future, or working as an associate with a future of purchasing the practice, definitely possible. But handle one thing at a time. Make sure you're getting into an associateship where you know you're going to learn and grow and be respected, and forget about you may purchase the practice in 3 years or 5 years. Everything's going to change in that first 1 or 2 or 3 years. So that may not even be on the table, purchasing the practice. If it is, you'll address it then. But don't even think about like having to negotiate those terms or have a contract set up right away from you're going to start as an associate to 3 years you're signing that you're going to take over the practice. Do not put yourself in that position. Yes, I asked this because I've heard several doctors who have had negative experiences going down this path, and I hope to avoid this. Right. Group 16, wow, we actually made it to the last group. Would you recommend doing something like dinner with the doc, or just doing a general health talk about a given subject at your practice? And how often would you do these? So that's both a great question and not the best question. It's not the best question. The great question is, yes, you're actually looking at it from how do I get people to know about me, come to me, and want my care? In that respect, great question. The bad question is you're asking about the logistics, the timing, which one, the amount. That doesn't matter. What matters is how you show up and actually do them. How great are you getting in front of a group of people and speaking? Not how many times you do it, because If you're not good at it and you do it once a month, you're wasting a lot of money and time if no one's coming in. If you are good at it, you should be doing it as often as you can if you're seeing the results. So it's not what, and this is important in every aspect of everything you learn from people in chiropractic. It's not so much what you do, it's how you do it and why you do it. 5 chiropractors can give the same lecture and have 5 different results from how many people want what they have to offer. 5 people can do the same training and have 5 different results. 5 people can do the same technique and with the same exact patient will have 5 different results. So you want to be focusing on being the best at what you do, not like how often you should do it or any of that. So whether you do an annual dinner with a doc, a quarterly, doesn't matter. But hey, if you do them well and they show a return on investment, it makes more sense to do them quarterly than annually. If you can see a return on investment from doing them monthly, doing them monthly. Do you enjoy doing them? You know, if you hate doing them, you probably won't have the great results, but avoid things you aren't great at, unless you know you need to learn them, which you don't need to learn how to do dinner with the docs. Or listen, public speaking is very powerful, but you don't have to be a great public speaker to have a great practice. If that's a skill you want to really learn and cultivate, absolutely, go learn it and go practice it and incorporate that as part of your marketing.